What's up, guys? Today I got another episode of How to Counter. Today we're talking about countering the Yone brothers. These guys are super infamous in the mid lane for being super annoying. They're just generally very anti-fun. These are both champions that I believe are not particularly strong, but they are super annoying. So here are why I think they're not good and how kind of I employ strategies to beat them fairly consistently, and how you guys should as well. Now, Yone. We're starting with Yone. I love to talk about Yone because everybody like in gold and below thinks he's the most broken champion in the game. And I think most high and low players thinks he's pretty useless because he's not like, he's so predictable, and he's so easily punishable that I think once you understand him, it's easy to really consistently gain big leads. I said he was predictable. Well, what does that mean? The biggest thing about Yone is understanding that he's a very cooldown reliant champion. He's a very cooldown reliant champion, and he has two very major cooldowns. He has his Q3, which is his like kind of win tornado thing, right? Both of the Yasuos have a mechanic where they have that very short cooldown Q, right? Where the Q1 is just normal Q, it's the normal slash. The second Q, Q2, that's how we're going to talk about it, is the second slash. And then the next Q in a little period of time is the tornado, if they choose to cast it. And if they knock you up, that's really, really bad. That's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid getting knocked up, because if they knock you up, they start to stack their lethal tempo. They get chances to auto attack you a bunch. They get to set up their whole kit. They get to space really nicely. Getting hit by the tornado is worst case scenario, or by the knockup. Yone's second really big Q is his E. Now his E is a 22-second cooldown at rank 1. So that means once he has 1 point into it, and he maxes it second, which means it's going to be rank 1 throughout all of lane phase. Towards the end, he'll start getting 1 or 2 more points into it. Q3 comes up on a predictable pattern that you can keep track of. Trackable. So usually the complaint is, well, Yone's so broken, he's impossible to counter because he has no mana and he can just cast his cooldowns all the time. Well, it's really only these two cooldowns that are really dangerous. So the rule of thumb is, if he has both of these abilities up, you have to be very careful. Right? If he has his Q3 up and he has his E off cooldown so he can use it, you have to be just super passive, you have to be super far back. He applies a lot of pressure with both them up. If he only has one of them up, you have to have some way to deal with it. Whether it's a reactive cooldown. Now, a reactive cooldown is a cooldown, usually it's mobility or it's CC, that you can use to kind of deal with as a response to an engage, right? So an example would be RE Charm, right? RAE. Another example would be Fizz E, right? The Fizz Playful Trickster where he hops up in the air. Like, that would be a good one. ZW. There's a million other ones. Annie E. REW. Like, all of these abilities are reactive cooldowns that you can use to punish him. Or not punish him, but deal with the engage. So if he has one of these spells up, you keep your reactive cooldown, you keep your kind of response to the engage available, and you try to poke him down. Now, if he has none of his cooldowns up, if he has neither, if he has no Q3 and he just uses E, you need to punish him incredibly hard. He cannot get on top of you. You have more space to get on top of him. It should be super, super straightforward. Just get on top of him and pop it. Though that's the biggest key about Yone, is understanding is very cooldown reliant, and he has two significant cooldowns, the Q3 and the E. Now the vast majority of mid champions are going to have range advantage on Yone. So while you either have a reactive cooldown and he only has one spell up, or if he has no spells up, you use your range advantage to poke him down. Right? You permanent poke him down, whatever. A common theme with both Yone and Yasuo is they win all-ins really, really, really hard. Right? So that means we're usually going to try to beat these guys with either poke damage or with burst damage. We will never, ever, ever try to all-in him. So I play a lot of Annie, I play a lot of Tryndamere, I play a lot of Victor. If I'm playing Victor, what my goal is to keep the wave in the middle, maybe a little bit closer to my side so that he doesn't get to extend the lane so he gets nice all-ins, right? If these guys get to freeze, they get to force all-insies. So you try to freeze or you try to keep the wave in the middle. If I'm playing Victor, I'm going to try to poke him down. If I'm playing Annie, I'm going to wait for him to Q3 or to E into me. I'm going to stun him with my burst damage, and then I'm going to run away, right? It's a very reactive playstyle into this kind of guy. If I'm playing Tryndamere, again, it's kind of the same thing. I wait for him to tornado in. I take a short trade. I use my Tryndamere E to dash away to deny the all-in, because these guys, their all-in is so strong. Their Q stacks lethal tempo, so they go auto Q, auto Q, and lethal tempo is like fully stacked, and they will just run you down, right? So we cannot all in. We have to either poke them or we have to burst them. Either way, we want to avoid them getting freezes. If they get a freeze, they get to extend the amount of lane they get to all in you on. It's super, super scary. That's true for both Yasuo and Yone. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Yasuo. And you can see I actually have an example here, which I'm going to draw some examples. Now, Yasuo is actually mechanically far more complex than Yone, right? Yone really only has two options, and they're relatively linear. They're cast on like nice, long, straight lines, right? When he E's out straight. When he Q3s, he Q's out straight. It's all kind of, it's a lot slower. It's more predictable, which makes it easier to counteract. Yasuo has way more dashes and way more options, and he's really annoying. I actually hate Yasuo way more than I hate Yone. We can still use some tips to kind of create some order in the chaos that is this champion. Now, the things that we just talked about are still true. Do not let him get freezes. That means if we're playing an assassin champion or a burst mage and you have this wave coming out, make sure you walk this wave in. Your job here, Annie is on really hard offense because Yasuo can't step up without getting bursted, right? So Annie's going to stand here and she's going to walk this wave in and she's going to build up the wave. She's going to slow push it and she's going to build up several waves so that when she crashes it, multiple crash so that he cannot freeze it, right? You can't freeze a wave. There's too many minions. You would die in the minion wave. So you slow push into these guys. You do not let them freeze. And again, we're working to play around burst or poke damage. We really don't want Yasuo to get his all-ins. With Yasuo specifically, he has to play around minions, right? Let's say he wants to dash. Let's say Yasuo is here and he wants to dash. He can only dash to this minion, up this way, or he would walk up this way towards these minions. Now, the reason I'm drawing these lines out like this is because once we start to understand these lines and start to visualize these lines, Yasuo starts to become more readable, more predictable. And again, predictability precedes punishment. So if you understand where he's going to dash, it becomes a lot easier to draw order in the chaotic dashes. They start to make a little bit of sense. It's actually the same thing with his Q, because his Q happens on a very narrow straight line. So you cannot stand anywhere on this line because you wouldn't be able to deal with his dash and you wouldn't be able to deal with his Q. If you were standing, let's say this Annie is standing here or here or here. Yasuo can just walk up, hit a really nice little easy Q, nice little easy Q. She can actually Q, E behind, Q again, and get a pretty much basically guaranteed tornado. He got to force an all-in because of poor positioning, right? So the biggest thing about Yasuo is understanding your positioning and that it's all relative to where he is at compared to the minions. So drawing lines between Yas and minions makes this matchup a lot easier. And you know you can't stand on it. So here, Annie's doing a very good job. And by the way, I took this clip from a Korean Annie one trick. I believe this is a Grandmaster Korean game. So both of these players are very, very, very good at their champions. And Annie is standing here on the side of the wave, making sure that if Yasuo comes up, she's going to make sure that she's nowhere in range for him to Q or for him to E. Now, let's say the wave is more, let's say Yasuo is here. Let's assume we have completely different champions. We have Yasuo and Yasuo's here. Let's actually say that we're playing GAREN. I actually did a review of a GAREN versus a Yasuo mid lane today, so that's probably why I'm thinking of GAREN. The issue with the GAREN that I was reviewing is the GAREN was standing here. We can kind of keep in mind, here, let me write a G. This will make this more clear. G for GAREN, and then pink for Yasuo. Now, GAREN would keep standing here. Now, we can see the issue with GAREN standing here. If we draw the line from where Yasuo is at to the minions, boom, boom, GAREN cannot stand in this area, right? If he does, Yasuo is going to get really efficient Qs, right? And what Yasuo would do is he would walk up to the minion, he would Q it, he would get wave push, he would stack his Q towards his tornado, and he would hit Garen, and he would stack his lethal tempo. And then he could dash through the minion, and then he could auto Garen, stacking his lethal tempo more, and then autoing him, and then his tornado's up, and then he still has the E on Garen. So where could the Garen stand to prevent that from happening? He would have to stand on the side so that when Yasuo steps up to Q the minion, now we can drop the hammer, go in and trade on the Yasuo, right? You have to stand off the wave, away from the minions. If you can visualize lines from where the Yasuo is standing onto the minions, this matchup all of a sudden has some order and it becomes a lot easier to understand what to do. It creates some sort of reason for the dashes, right? It creates some lines in the chaos. So the biggest thing about Yasuo is, first of all, same things about Yone. Don't let him freeze. Don't let him get all-ins. We need to poke him down or use our burst damage to avoid all-ins. If we're playing an assassin-based champion, we'll want to build up slow pushes to make sure you can't freeze. If we're playing a poke-based champion, we'll want to keep the wave in the middle or maybe a little bit more on our side. And now the biggest thing about Yasuo mechanically is get off the wave relative to where Yasuo is at, right? So if Yasuo's here, the wave is in this direction, right? And you would want to be either down here if you were like super ahead trying to set up an all-in, or over here, right? If Yasuo's up here, it's the opposite. We actually can't be where the Andy's standing. We would need to be up in this pocket or down here in this pocket, right? And this pocket's scary because he can actually dash and walk to you. So this would be assuming you're really strong and you want to kill him once he dashes in. That's what Yasuo is all about. It's about understanding the lines of where he can go. I hope this video helped you guys understand how to beat the Wind Brothers. I know they're super, super annoying, but once you understand how they work, they should be a lot easier to counter. Let me know if this helped you guys. Let me know what other champions you guys would like to know how to counter next. It can be in different lanes if you guys would like. I appreciate you guys. I see you guys in the next one. Peace.